Welcome to Bookrupsy Studio. This is an audio narration of Whispers of the Forest, a Princess Mononoke fanfiction written by Kintora. I was given permission to record, produce, and distribute this audio chapter. Please do not use or re-upload content without express permission from content creators. The links to the author's stories are provided below. Keep listening at the end of the video for the author's note to the readers. I love reading out loud and making stories accessible to people who enjoy listening to audios. I'd really appreciate it if you could like this video and subscribe to support my channel. Thanks. Whispers of the Forest. Summary. When her village is attacked, Kaya narrowly escapes to the lands of the west. Instead of fighting Ashitaka, she encounters a ferocious wolf god patrolling the heart of the forest. Just when she thought he would kill her for trespassing, he saves her from drowning in the storm-swollen river. Chapter 1. Journey. My eyes snapped wide open as I sprang to my feet silently. It was still dark, though a feeling of unease woke me from a deep sleep. Adrenaline raced through my body like cold fire, evaporating my fatigue. It wasn't the first time I woke with my heart pounding, hearing phantom sounds outside. I lived alone these last 7 years, relegated to the village border. Listening intently, I picked up on alarming sounds coming from the village in the distance. Faint cries echoed in the night outside my home. Dressing as quickly as I could, I donned my fur cloak and stone dagger. Swiftly tying a sash around my waist, I searched for my sheathed blade in the darkness. Grabbing my bow and quiver, I cautiously brushed aside my straw mat door and darted into the cold. There was smoke rising from the village, and a malevolent crimson glow illuminated the forest line. Rushing over the footpath towards the village, an unnatural heat fanned over me as I broke through the brambles in my way. Fire swept through half the small buildings in the area, staining the inky night sky with a sickening sheen of blood red. For a moment, I could only stare at the destructive light, easily consuming wood and straw structures in the clearing. On instinct, I ducked just as something lodged into the branch above my head with an ominous thud. Greasy red feathers glistened in the blazing firelight. I dodged again, taking cover as I fled towards the nearest structure. There was so much smoke, heat, and chaos. Men fought as screams of the fearful and dying rended the night air. A woman's blood-curdling shriek pierced my ears, but as I started towards it, her scream cut off with a sinister gurgle. Amidst the clash of weapons, the yelling and screaming, I could also pick out the voices of panicked children. I was close to the stables. I could find Kiba, and I could escape the bloodbath. But my feet were glued to the ground, frozen in place. Dirt caked between my toes. Icy sweat soaked my back and face. My heart thundered in my ears as short, hasty breaths sawed through my lungs. I was scared. More scared than I had ever been. Perhaps more scared than facing a giant demon boar god as it slowly turned towards me, its evil eyes widening as the wrathful monster descended upon my friends and the blade I had raised to defend us. Once again, I stood face to face with certain death, but this time, Ashitaka wasn't here to save us. I was alone. Looking around the corner, I could see a young boy dragging himself along the wooden building I was hiding behind. Arrows stuck from his leg and back. Slipping back into the open again, I grabbed his arm and looped it around my neck, pulling him into the shadows with me. "You're going to be okay," I heard myself saying. "Yuya, right? I remember you." The boy looked up weakly, blood dripping from his chin. "Princess." "Don't speak. You'll lose more blood. Just stay with me." Tears slipped from the corners of his gritty eyes, carving tracks into the dust covering his face. Scared. I'm so scared." "I know." A knot formed in my throat as I watched his small chest stop moving. "May you find peace, Yuya." As I moved his small broken body from my lap, I wondered how many more Yuyas this madness would create. As I looked upon the little boy's crumpled corpse, I realized peace was merely an illusion. How many more people, my people, would be lost tonight, in the future. We were all dying, and not just dying, we were dying out. Suddenly, I was flooded with a reckless sense of justice, born from rage. If we were all to die, then I would die honorably alongside my people. But first, I would spill as much of the enemy's blood as payment. Kaya. I spun around, searching for the voice that spoke my name, and met the calm visage of the village wise woman. Why had she not fled? What was she still doing here?
These beasts will not stop until everything here is destroyed. You will not be spared. Leave while you still can, my princess.
I stubbornly remained rooted to the ground. I'm no coward. I will not run away when my people need me. The elder woman peered into my face, the leathery creases in her tranquil face deepening in the eerie light. Her wrinkled lips moved softly.
Leave. You cannot save any lives tonight. But if to your heart's desire, continue your fight upon your return. To die here is not your destiny. The fate of our tribe rests with you.
What do you mean? My anger lifted briefly. What can I do to save our people if I am to leave? She nodded serenely and looked into the distance. Her purposeful gaze seemed to see something beyond the forest. Her voice softened.
Head for the west, my child. There you will encounter a crossroad. Which path you will choose, not even the gods know. But what you choose will shift the balance.
What balance? I demanded, my hands grasping her frail shoulders. Please, tell me. I don't want to choose wrongly. I bit back a shriek as the ground below me tore open and I was thrown violently away. Covering my face, I rolled to my feet just as the wind whipped my face and snagged at my clothes when another explosion detonated nearby. As soon as I could control the vertigo, the awful ringing in my ears, I looked for the wise woman. I found her face down on the ground a few feet away. Bracing her small, broken body against mine, I felt something wet and warm gush past my fingers. Looking down, my blood chilled when I saw wooden splinters piercing her chest. With each gaping breath, her blood poured from her lips. Her eyes were barely open as she looked up at me. With the last of her strength, she pushed my hand against the deerskin pouch around her neck. Then, the wise woman's breath ceased, and her eyes stared sightlessly up at mine. No, through me, to some point beyond even the fathomless sky. I held her hand for a brief moment before taking the pouch from her. The dwindling warmth in her fingers began to dissipate as I let them go to close her eyes. The battle cries and fighting brought me back to the present. Stowing the pouch away, I retrieved my blade and fled to the stables. Most of our animals were gone, either spooked and escaped already or looted by our attackers. I let out a sharp whistle, but there wasn't any movement except for a few startled pigs and sheep. My elk wasn't here. Struggling to control my panic, I left the stables, but before I could get very far, a sharp, piercing pain in the side of my thigh crippled me. Looking down, I spotted the arrow lodged in my upper thigh. Throwing myself to the side into a crouch, I narrowly escaped another barrage of arrows thudding into the ground in my wake. Hearing the shouts of the foreign invaders drove me further into the forest cover, despite the white-hot flashes of pain pulsating through my leg. Cursing under my breath, I prayed Kiba had escaped safely. Unable to move any further without stemming the blood, I sat and stretched out my wounded leg under the overhang of a girthy tree. Gritting my teeth, I snapped the arrow shaft and slipped the broken end into my sash. Black and white spots appeared before my eyes as I fought back the nausea from the pain. Feeling the bloody wound, I realized the arrowhead hadn't gone through my leg. Yet, it was too dark to fish out with my dagger. All I could do was bind it as tightly as I could for now. Before long, I could hear my pursuers crashing through the inky foliage, following my trail by torchlight. I could see the line of floating lights looming closer and spreading out. It was only a matter of time until they found me, hidden under the tree. Turning away, I leaned the back of my head against the rough, mossy bark. Sweat poured over my eyes despite the early morning chill. I had been ready to die back there. And now, after receiving even the smallest glimmer of hope, I realized I didn't want to die. I couldn't die. Not here. Not yet. Even if that made me a coward, I had to see him again. I had to. But a light flickered across my face, and my eyes snapped open. It was one of them. He was a young man, not much older than me. He was dressed in foreign armor, one of the Yamato, but his fierce dark eyes met mine, sweat dotting the side of his face. So familiar. I knew him. He came home to help us. It had to be him. My eyes watered and stung from the fiery light hovering so close to me. He opened his mouth to shout, but I spoke first. Nii-sama. Is that you? He paused, blinking as the hard look he'd pinned on me softened. The blade he had pressed against my neck trembled, drawing a trickling line of blood. Roughly, he drew his weapon back. The sharp movement cleared my delirium briefly, and an unfamiliar young man replaced Ashitaka's phantom before me. For a moment, I thought he was preparing to thrust the katana into my heart, when instead he spoke in a low, harsh whisper. I'll divert them. Get as far away as you can. He turned from me, but paused. I'm not your brother, but if he were here, I'm sure he would want you to live. And just like that, the torchlight was gone, and the footsteps with it. I didn't know how long I lay there, but dawn was breaking when I felt something warm and wet nuzzling my forehead. A thick, musky clover scent wafted over my feverish face. Kiba, I breathed faintly. My elk had somehow found me. He came back. Tears sprang to the corners of my eyes as I lifted a hand to his bristly muzzle. You're safe. Wrapping my hands around his woolly neck, I stood up with his help and weakly mounted his back. Into the dark, bluish dawn, he broke into a trot and then a canter. I nudged him in the opposite direction of the rising sun. As the frosty mountain mist billowed up against us, Kiba's hooves seemed to take flight as we raced down the forested hillside. I buried away memories of my village and the people that I had known all my life. If I were to revisit them now, I thought I would lose my mind. Focusing on the pulsing pain in my leg was easier. It reminded me that I was alive and not to give in to despair. I would meet my crossroad, my destiny, just as our village wise woman had predicted. I had no choice, and she had urged me to head to the lands of the West. There was only one thing out there I wanted to find. 7 years had passed. Perhaps finally I would discover what became of Ashitaka. Thank you for listening to Chapter 1. Here's a message from Kintora. Author's note. I've always wondered what happened to Kaya after Ashitaka left the Imishi village. She was so incredibly brave and intriguing. It was a shame we never saw her again after Ashitaka began his journey. Growing up watching the film, I always thought they were siblings. However, I'm not sure if that was Miyazaki's true intention. Coming from a cultural perspective of the Muromachi period and the last records of the Emishi history, it's possible that Kaya and Ashitaka were surviving clan heirs and possibly betrothed. Due to these revelations, I will write with certain considerations in mind. As for what those would be, read on to see for yourself. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for reaching out to me over the years. While this story is still available on Fanfiction Net, I'm slowly moving my work over to AO3, or Archive of Our Own. Your encouragement means a lot, and helps re-inspire me when I lose interest or hit a writer's block. This new chapter is dedicated to all of you who have supported my writing in the past. To veteran and new readers, enjoy. End note. Once again, if you enjoyed this reading, please support my channel and hit that like button. And if you want to be notified for more content, just click that subscribe button under the video. Until next time.